Today we're going to talk about how to successfully sell your ball pythons at a show, or really any reptiles, and quite frankly you can actually apply this mostly to sales in general. We're going to keep it pretty simple with 5 steps, and step number 1 would be to know your stuff and show your stuff. You need to know what you're talking about, and you need to show the animals to back it up. Being knowledgeable and being able to pass that knowledge to other people is absolutely paramount. If you just stand up there with animals, you'll make some sales, no doubt, but not as many because people are not going to be confident. Plus, you're not going to be able to be competitive to sell these animals. Knowing your stuff might seem like just knowing about the care of a ball python, and that is certainly an absolute must, but you should know how to care for it in multiple different ways. Not everybody keeps their ball pythons or any reptiles the same sometimes. There are little tweaks and differences, but obviously everybody always hears about tub and tank. So know how to keep your animals successfully in a tub and know how to keep them successfully in a tank. It doesn't matter your preferences, know how to do both, because people that you sell to are not going to always agree with you, and they're not going to want to keep it the way you kept it, and that's okay. So know how to do both. Have your own suggestions, no doubt, but know how to give the proper care, whether people want to use heat mats or over the head heat lights. I have a preference for heat mats, but if someone is dead set on doing a heat lamp, there are successful ways to do this. So know how to do it. Know how to give that advice, but then give your suggestion as well, but go along with the ways that the potential buyer wants to keep their animal, so long as it's not detrimental to their health, like wanting to keep it without heat or without a thermostat. Something like that, of course, you want to raise objection to. But the basics, just because you might not agree with them, don't fret about that. You're also going to want to know your genetics clearly. If you don't know the genetics that you're selling, people are going to question whether you actually bred this animal or not. They're going to question your knowledge on what you threw together. Maybe you just threw 2 animals together and you might not know what is even in the animal you have. You're going to have to know the genetics that at least you work with. And quite frankly, I recommend looking into quite a bit more than that. There has been a lot of videos on this. We've done a few morph highlights ourselves on this channel, but there's been lots of YouTubers and breeders that have uploaded deep dives into each morph. Another resource to learn these would just be to jump on Morph Market. You can sort by all of the genetics. You can filter by recessives, dominants, incomplete dominants, and just kind of learn from there what all these genes do and see how they interact with each other so that you know how to speak to the customer and are basically an expert on the genetics you have on your table, because you're selling them. You should be an expert. And finally, pricing. Pricing is important. Something you can use to be competitive would be Morph Market. You can also go to local shows before you vend them and see what these animals are selling like from other breeders. And for the final part of this, show your stuff. If you have a bunch of normals and you're an expert on just the care of the ball python, you're going to sell them because people who just want a pet are going to be comfortable coming to you to do that. But of course, as you get into more genetics, you're going to have quite a bit more diversity in pattern, and color, and contrast. This is going to attract more attention. So know how to organize it. When we go to shows, we utilize 2 display cases, and I try to keep all of my clown on one side and my pied on the other side. It doesn't always 100% work out, but for the most part, I'm able to market these animals together in a way that makes sense, in a way that is aesthetically pleasing. If you're not telling a story, it gets a little bit harder to follow, and if someone's looking for a specific genetic, they might go to where that is mostly at and then miss the animal that they might have bought that you have over here for some reason. Try to keep everything together and take pride in what you're showing off. Number 2, which would be a part of prepping still, but is realistically also an everyday, all the time thing, would be to market yourself. A lot of people, when they think of marketing, they're thinking of signs, they're thinking of business cards, they're thinking of your general look and display of everything, which kind of even touches onto our last point about showing your stuff. But it's a lot more than that. You should stand out, because if you stand out, you get that initial nibble. Having a nice and effective display is very important. Having a clean display, maybe even around events like holidays. Halloween is always a very fun one for the reptile community, but remember, you're selling to all sorts of different people, so if you want to make an impactful display that stands out and calls attention, have a lot of fun with it. It is a lot of fun, quite frankly, to do that. I take a lot of pride in building my table around events, or just in general. Just having a nice clean display that makes a lot of sense, that can draw people in, is very important. That's the initial thing that's going to get them to approach you, which is the first step. Having all of these physical elements are very important, really, but often what is forgotten about the marketing portion of it is that you are going to need to advertise, essentially. This includes social media, and social media is one of the #1 tools you can use to grab attention, especially from an audience that you normally wouldn't engage with. Things like Facebook, Instagram, TikTok, other such things. And then, of course, what we're doing right now, YouTube. YouTube is our kind of go-to social media platform. When I created this channel, it was quite frankly created as a marketing tool. It kind of became more than that, but all I really wanted to begin with was to put a face to what I'm selling, to put myself out there. And you can take that as far as you want to go, but don't neglect it. You have to have a social media footprint of some sort, in my opinion. And while I don't think it's 100% necessary to sell at a show, it certainly helps quite a bit. We get a good amount of recognition at shows. Sometimes it's just that. Sometimes they watched one of our walkthrough videos, which have garnered a decent amount of attention, and they've never even seen my face, but they saw that right there. A logo which I'm very happy with. I think that it obviously has done its job and has grabbed attention. So you would need a symbolic thing like that as well. Something to grab people's attention and make them recognize the brand, really. This is actually a big topic, something that we plan to make a full-on video about sometime in the near future. The third, and what I would argue is the absolute most important part of selling at a show, or quite frankly selling in general, is to be authentic and genuine. I worked retail for 16.5 years of my life. Most of that as a retail manager. And it was a very boots on the ground, on the floor type of thing. I wasn't sitting in an office. It wasn't one of those. And I would often butt heads with how they would want you to sell things and shove things down people's throats. Until eventually it seemingly happened where they started to actually listen to me, and they actually made a whole model where the second point was authentic in their little acronym that they had made. And there's a lot more to it there, but you need to be out and speaking to people. I can't tell you how many awesome breeders just sit down behind their table and, hey, if that. Maybe they're on their phone. I get it. It's been a long show. You get a lot of people who are just kicking tires. You get a little tired of it. But as Wayne Gretzky once said, you miss 100% of the shots you don't take. And if you're going to treat someone like that, well, you're just ignoring them, and they're going to remember that. If they were on the fence and they had multiple options, they are not going to pick you. If you are the only option, they might buy from you, but they are going to be skeptical. If you are out and speaking to people, and when I say out, I mean out. Even standing behind your table, it is a literal barrier. It is very important to note that the consumer-seller relationship is incredibly adversarial. Let them know that you acknowledge their presence with a smile, with a friendly attitude. Ask them if there's any questions that they had, if there's anything that they're looking for today. They will 9 times out of 10 say no, because it is in our blood to do so, because we don't want to be pushed on and say, okay, that changes, you just let me know. You could even make it a little more personal. Hey, that's awesome. If that changes, you have any questions at all, my name's Ryan, just let me know. And then just be available. I think it's important, like as I mentioned, that the table is removed from the equation. Now, obviously you can't actually remove the table because your animals need to be on it, and it'd be kind of silly to be putting them on the ground. What I mean is go around your table. You're gonna want to go back and sit down occasionally, but make yourself mostly available. I very rarely sit, and quite often I'm in front of my table. I'm out of their way when there's a bunch of people wanting to look, and sometimes being in front of your tables is not as easy at crazy shows, but it's not impossible, especially if you set it up in a way where you kind of have a gap where you can be standing and you can make yourself available to people, usually maybe in the middle if you can split your display cases up. Make yourself available to these people. Make yourself friendly. Have a conversation, a genuine, authentic conversation. Try to forget you're trying to sell them something. Just talk with them. But it is incredibly important, and I hope that you can see the passion I have in this point. I like to make things where the most important thing is last, but I kind of can't do that with this point. But to me, this is the most important point. Now, maybe you are an introvert. Guess what? I am too. It might not look like it, but I've had some training to not do that. And it starts just by making yourself available. Clearly you can talk to somebody, and that's realistically all you need to do. Is you need to be able to talk to people, and you need to be able to do it authentically. And I guess the only other thing would be to be knowledgeable, which was kind of back to our first point about what you're talking about. I'll try not to sound like I'm beating a dead horse saying this, but the most important thing you can do is to be authentic, because that is what's really going to set you apart from everyone else, because you are being real with somebody. It's not even even something you can tell someone to necessarily do. You're not faking it. Don't be fake with them. Don't go out there and fake it. Be real. If someone is not looking for a bamboo clown, don't sell them a bamboo clown. Even if that means that you send someone to another seller. Hey, I don't sell Desert Ghost. I don't work Desert Ghost, but that guy right over there, he makes some of the coolest Desert Ghosts around. If you have any questions about anything else, just let me know. But yeah, I would check him out if that's what you're dead set on. Tell the truth. People are gonna respect that. They're gonna be like, that guy is stellar. And guess what? They're gonna tell someone who is interested in what you have on your table. That is how you do it. You build your foundation, you build your reputation. It's not overnight. Be real, be authentic. People love that. That's all they really want, is to be treated like a human being in a naturally adversarial relationship. Number 4 would be that once you sell an animal, you should make yourself available as a snake tech support to some extent for a while. Remember that not all of these animals are going to eat right away, and especially if you're selling to pet owners, you're going to get more questions. You're going to get, oh my God, it hasn't eaten, it's been 3 weeks, and they're going to freak out. And you shouldn't ignore that. I get that you will get it a lot. I get it on things that I didn't even sell them for, but that's okay. That means that they trust you, but you owe it to them as part of that to help get that snake established. Certainly, what I'm not suggesting is to just bend the knee to someone who might be irresponsible and that you're kind of maybe regretting selling to. Eventually that is going to happen. I'm sorry to say it, but eventually you are going to sell this to someone who maybe shouldn't have bought the animal to begin with. That could be a video in and of itself, but what we're talking about are people who just generally have questions, who absolutely love their animal and are committed to learning what it takes and adapting as they go along. Remember, you once were new too, and you had new questions then. Who helped you? You probably remember them, and you probably respect them, and you could be that person for someone else. Counterintuitively, if you completely ignore this person, well, what else do you expect them to think besides the fact that you sold them the animal, you got your money, and you basically said goodbye? While technically you can do that, I don't recommend it because that goes around. You're not going to create repeat buyers from that. You're not going to get a very good reputation from that. Again, I'm not saying that you should tolerate some level of abuse, and you should still respect your own privacy, and you should still have personal time to yourself, but eventually you should get back to people to help them out, and you should be providing useful advice and changes, asking to see the conditions of the animal, asking to see how they're keeping it, and making meaningful suggestions on how to better the care and how to possibly get them to eat. Again, I get this a lot. I'm not going to sit here and pretend that it sometimes doesn't get to be a lot, but I could always do it for a customer. If you purchase from me, I'm going to help you. It's as simple as that. And you should too, because most people are just trying to commit and give as much care to their animal as they can. And once you teach them how to do that, it is a cycle that just goes. You can say that you have now created someone who might be able to help someone else in the future. And that is the best way for this hobby to continue and gain more people that love this. And you have all of that responsibility in your hand. So be their tech support for at least a little bit. And my final point would be to make connections in the community or at a show. Again, it kind of goes back to being authentic and talking to the customer, but you should talk to the people around you too. In the ball python or in the reptile community, our competitors are not people that we need to beat. They're awesome people. I don't even view the people who I vend with as competitors. They're my friends, and I want them to be successful. And when you do that, they want you to be successful too. And you are going to talk to each other. You're going to make friendships that last a long time. And from just a point of view of building a business of sorts, of building a community of sorts, you're going to be able to collaborate. And just from a monetary point, you can actually use these connections to help build yourself and them better at the same time. If you are wanting to get into projects, there's things like breeder collaborations where you have an animal that they like and they have an animal that you like, and you think, wow, they'd make some pretty cool stuff. What if we bred those together and we split the babies? That would be incredibly useful for both people. Not only other breeders, but show promoters. Get to know these people that are effectively promoting you as part of the whole group so that they bring people to the show that bring people to you. Get to know people around you. To touch on my point originally about being an introvert, it's fine. Again, I am an introvert naturally. I have learned to overcome this. You have got to learn to overcome it. And I, more than anybody, understand that for some people, extroverts, this is no big deal. But for some of you, it's absolutely terrifying. You have to fight through it. And eventually, one day, it's no big deal. You have to learn to talk to people, whether they're customers or they're fellow breeders and vendors and showrunners, people who provide services even. You should learn to speak to these people. Local pet stores are an incredible resource. We have had a pet store near us for quite some time that I have built up a good relationship with that has helped me, and they have gotten my business because of this. And ironically, it's because they're real, because they were authentic with me from day one. It's fun, I promise you. Even as an introvert, I love seeing these people at my local show every single month. I look forward to it. They become a sort of friendship, a sort of family that you catch up with every single month, that you ask about their breeding plans, that you're very interested in. These are like-minded people, remember. They love the same weird stuff that you do. Hope you enjoyed our video. We do plan to make a full-fledged dive into marketing in the future. But for now, you can actually check out our old video on how to start a ball python business right here.